So we've been hearing that the Democrats are filibustering on the reopening of the government. So I thought we should look at exactly what a filibuster is and why President Trump wants them stopped. Filibuster is a tactic used in the United States Senate to delay or entirely prevent a vote on a proposed bill, amendment, or other Senate action. The idea is to talk a bill to death by extending debate indefinitely. Since the Senate has historically had very few restrictions on how long senators can speak, a single senator or even a group of senators can prevent a vote from happening by simply continuing to speak. So, how does it work? If no other senator is speaking, any senator who seeks recognition can speak for as long as they wish. This can be used to delay proceedings, especially if the goal is to prevent a vote on a controversial measure. For example, imagine a senator stands up and starts reading from a phone book or reciting a long speech, preventing the Senate from moving forward with voting on a bill. This is a classic filibuster. What is cloture? Cloture is the only formal procedure by which the Senate can vote to place a time limit on consideration of a bill or other matter, and thereby overcome a filibuster. It essentially ends debate so that a vote can actually occur. Here's how it works. To invoke cloture, at least 60 out of 100 senators must vote in favor. Once cloture is invoked, debate is limited to 30 additional hours, unless further extended by another vote, after which the Senate must vote on the bill. The purpose of cloture was designed to balance the Senate's tradition of unlimited debate by these gasbags with the need to eventually make decisions and pass legislation. How has it changed over time? Well, the filibuster and cloture rules have evolved significantly since the early days of the Senate. Back in 1789, the Senate actually had no formal rules limiting debate. That meant any senator could, in theory, speak indefinitely. While this sometimes led to delays, it wasn't really used as an intentional tactic to block legislation. Then, in 1806, the Senate accidentally removed a rule that had allowed a simple majority to end debate. This unintended change basically introduced the filibuster, because now senators could block legislation just by continuing to talk, and there wasn't an easy way to stop them. By 1917, pressure to reform the filibuster had grown, especially during World War I, when important legislation was being delayed. That year, the Senate adopted Rule 22, which allowed 2/3 of senators present and voting to end debate. This is what we call cloture. It was a big step toward controlling filibusters. Fast forward to 1975, and the threshold for cloture was lowered from 2/3, or 67 votes, to 3/5, or 60 votes, of the entire Senate. This made it a bit easier to end a filibuster, but still required a supermajority, which was seen as a compromise between majority rule and minority rights. More recently, in 2013, when Democrats controlled the Senate, they changed the rules to allow a simple majority, just 51 votes, to end debate on most presidential nominations, except for Supreme Court justices. This move is often called the nuclear option. In 2017, Republicans extended this to Supreme Court nominations as well. However, these changes didn't affect legislative filibusters, which still require 60 votes for cloture. Why is it a problem? The filibuster and cloture rules have become pretty controversial for several reasons. First, there's gridlock. Requiring 60 votes for most legislation can really lead to a standstill, especially when the Senate is so divided along party lines. If one party can't get to 60 votes, important bills might never even come up for a vote, which just stalls the whole legislative process. Then there's the issue of minority power. While the filibuster was originally intended to protect minority viewpoints, critics now argue it gives too much power to a small group of senators, allowing them to block the will of the majority and the broader public. Over time, the filibuster has also been used more and more along party lines, not so much for principled stands on specific issues. This shift has led to accusations that it's being used more for obstruction than for meaningful debate. And finally, some folks argue that the filibuster actually contradicts the Constitution's default rule of majority decision-making for regular legislation. The Constitution only requires supermajorities, like 2/3, for certain actions, such as overriding a presidential veto, not for routine lawmaking. Right now, with a government shutdown and President Trump urging the end of the filibuster, the issue is especially pressing. Republicans, who hold a majority, are facing a real dilemma. Should they use the nuclear option to pass spending bills and other agenda items without Democratic obstruction? If they do, they could set a precedent that might be used against them when Democrats eventually regain power. So, to summarize, the filibuster is a delay tactic where senators can speak indefinitely to block a vote. Cloture is a vote, requiring 60 senators, to end debate and force a vote on the bill. Over time, the filibuster evolved from an accidental rule change in 1806, with cloture introduced in 1917 and adjusted in 1975. Recent nuclear options have lowered thresholds for nominations, but not for legislation. Filibusters can cause gridlock, give too much power to minority, which is currently Democratic. They use these filibusters for partisan reasons and contradict the Constitution's majority rule for regular legislation. It's really important for us to understand how all these political wranglings work. It clarifies how these legislators can allegedly spend so much time in Washington, D.C. and do so little work. That's when they aren't traveling on our dime for their personal agendas. When I hear these people say that they are serving or working for us, it makes me want to yak. The time is coming where they can't hide behind their empty words. We see their lies and scams, and I honestly don't think there's any way to rehabilitate this system that allows these parasites to feed off the American people's hard work, blood, sweat, and tears.